Welcome to segment 8 in the Choose You This Day Whom You Will Serve series, the Free Love Movement. You saw in a previous segment that two of America's greatest strengths were their faith in Jesus Christ and the family. Well, Satan used the free love movement like a huge bomb to begin to destroy the family. And this series is about choosing who you're going to serve. So I'm going to talk about God's perfect design. Then I'm going to go in to show you how the cost and the destruction that the free love movement cost the United States. So let's begin with God's design. God's the perfect designer. He created man and he had a job for man to do. And he saw that it wasn't good for man to be alone, so he created a woman for the man to be his helper. But woman would be so much more than that. The woman would be his partner, his friend, his lover. And in that, God told man, you leave father and mother, and you be joined and cleaved to your wife as one flesh. So instead of decisions being made separately, now every decision came into being that it was for the union, the team. And God's design is that when a man and a woman come together, he said, be fruitful and multiply. Well, in order for them to do that, he created what we know as the sexual union. He created a man with his male organs. He created a female with her organs, where he comes into her and they and their love together produces life. They multiply. And in order for God to want that to happen and that they would want it, he created that pleasure that we get. And it's called that orgasm, that heightened, exhilarating, beautiful result of that love coming together. And in the middle of that, there's a hormone, a bonding hormone that's released when that happens, and it's called oxytocin. And when that union and that exhilaration happens, oxytocin is released, and it's created to bond people together, which is important to remember. And in that union, life is born. And life comes from that union where the man and the woman, they raise and lift up, nurture, and protect those God placed under them. It's a commitment to each other and a commitment to those that are created in their loving union. And Ephesians gives us that perfect example where it talks about a man is to love, to nurture, to cherish the woman, just as Christ did the church, because marriage is to be a physical picture of Christ and his church, that oneness, that union, that love, that leadership. And when that's distorted, it's sin. And so God tells woman to submit to the beautiful love, the nurturing, the cherishing, the sacrificial love. But she is not to submit to something that's distorted. And when you have that love, that union, it's not a burden to anybody. It brings love, joy, peace, trust. But Satan needed to destroy that because it's such a strong bond. So he brought in the free love movement. And the thing is that God gave us a conscience. So for this free love movement to work, he had to get people's minds altered. And so that hippie movement really brought in with it a lot of drugs. so that he could alter the brain to be able to bring in the lies that he wanted to bring. And the lie was, you can have that love, you can have that feeling without any commitment. Well, we're going to see how that worked. Well, so man thought, yes, I can just use a woman and I can toss her. And woman thought, I don't need to have a man telling me what to do, and I don't have to sit at home and wipe snotty noses. Well, they believed the lie, and evil came in, just like in the garden. And what was the result of that? Remember, Satan is the opposite of everything that God is. That union was created to produce life. Well, life started coming. Well, that wasn't part of the deal. We weren't going to have any commitment here. We got to get rid of this baby. We need to control birth control. They wanted to control birth, okay. Well, how do we do that? Let's kill the baby. Let's get rid of it. Let's sacrifice it. That's Ishtar, Ashtoreth, Diana. And she comes in with Moloch, because Moloch is give those kids up. And they would sacrifice their own children for the pleasure. Over 63 million babies have been put to death for their pleasure. And if you want to understand how many people 63 million is, Google U of M Stadium filled with people. It's the University of Michigan Stadium filled with people. There's about 110 people that fit in that stadium. I want you just to pause for a minute and look at all those people, all different walks of life, all different ages, and then multiply that by 630. That's how many people never got to live. They never even got a chance to fulfill their purpose and what they were created for. Then let's go on. Another thing that happened is there's safety in God's design. Outside God's design, there's destruction. STDs, sexual transmitted diseases. God tells us, I'm going to bless this union. But if you take it out, you will be judged. And so back in the 60s, when this free love movement came about, there was only like 5 different STDs. And you kind of had to be with like a large number, over 50 people, to really end up with a disease like that. Well, today, there are over 30 STDs, and 5 of which right now there aren't any cure. And they can cause death and sterilization. That's destruction. And instead of passing love to your partner, to your spouse, you are actually passing death and pain and sorrow. And that's where we talked about in the last segment. The school said, oh, we'll teach about safe sex. No, there isn't safe sex. Those condoms aren't going to stop any of that. Okay, so then what happens is now some of the women, they don't want to, they end up pregnant. They don't want to kill their baby. They want to let their baby live. They want to give their baby life. Well, the man says, I told you this was uncommitted. I want nothing to do with that child. So you need to abort it, or you're on your own. So when we step out of that uncommitment, there's pain. There's pain. Whether I have to choose to kill my baby, whether I keep my baby and try to raise it on my own. And remember, we talked about that in that union, there's no burden. But if a woman chooses to keep that child, The government, which are working people, they have to take up that slack, which then takes from their family. That's not God's design. Or they can choose the third option. All three are painful and hard, and that's not to put a burden on the working class people, but to place that baby, give it life, and place it in the arms of a couple who are waiting and cannot have a child, who will take that child as their own and give that baby life and not put a burden on society. And another thing that has come from wanting to satisfy that sexual drive in the flesh without commitment is pornography. Pornography is so rampant, especially since we have computers and those click, 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 click. It gets your brain going so stimulated that it's hard to even come back in that beautiful fleshly world and be able to have that relationship. But in order to produce all that porn, all that sexual drive that is just out there, that's where sex trafficking has flourished. It is a huge business, and somebody can make up to over to $200,000 a year just on one girl. And so what they've done, again, is sacrificed our children. The average age for sex trafficking is between the ages of 12 and 13, where they take these children and they allow men to use them and abuse them. This is not okay. This is not okay. And this is where and what it has cost us. And we need to want to do something about it. And so let's think too, what can we do? What can we do? Well, first of all, we have to realize that every time we watch a movie that has sex outside of God's design, we are part of all the murders, putting the burden on the working class people, and seeing our children trafficked to satisfy somebody's desire. We need to stop watching it and not just say, oh, I'm so sad that was put in there. No, those are teaching our younger generation that it's okay just to be with anybody without commitment. And hopefully you will see what it's cost us. We need to begin again to teach children God's beautiful design and what that looks like. And help men to see God created you to love and nurture those placed under you. Not treat them like a doormat or use them for your agenda. No, you sacrifice for them. We need men to stand up and say no more. When somebody talks and brags about how they used a woman or a child or a girl, we need men to take a stand for that. We need men to stand up and be the men of God that God is calling you to. We need to encourage women and not make them feel bad if they choose to stay home and take on one of the hardest, most precious jobs that anybody could take, and that's to raise their children. And so it's time for us to turn back to God, to have those clean, pure hearts, to go back to God's design and get upset. And let's do something about it. Let's do something now. And so I pray that through this, you will no longer want to be a part of anything outside God's design, and that you will stand up and begin to raise up God's beautiful design of abstinence and purity and marriage between a man and a woman for life, so that they can produce life and take care of those lives that they produce. May God bless you, and go. Choose you this day who you will serve, whose plan you will be a part of, whose design will you be a part of. Until next time.